That's it. I'm getting me mallet.
Freaky Fred. This is definitely the most famous episode, mostly because of the titular character, this creepy, unholy abomination that the show tries to pass off as Muriel's nephew. He comes to visit the baghouse, but some hijinks ensue. Fred and Courage end up getting locked into the bathroom, which sounds like the plot to a porno, but hear me out. This is horrifying for Courage, as the man wants to completely shave him down. You see, he's an escaped inmate of the Home of Freaky Barbers, whom Courage tries to call. The music that plays during this scene is really weird and unsettling, along with Fred's narration. He describes other instances of him shaving people, which doesn't end well for these victims.
The look upon my young love's face was sweet as lace.
By the end, he is hauled off, not before leaving an eerie message on Courage's remaining fur. My favorite bit is that while Eustace should be fixing the bathroom door, he spends all day relaxing away from the house. They cut to this frequently, which somehow got a genuine laugh out of me. Still, this is one of the creepiest episodes in the show's run. Freaky Fred himself gives off bad vibes, as if he's more than just a weird barber. All his mannerisms make him unsettling, to put it simply.
Courage. Your hair. It reminds me of the first time I knew just how I felt about hair.
Remembrance of Courage Past. This is a more depressing episode that takes its time of setting up the story. We follow as Courage experiences flashbacks which haunt him in the present. One where a cruel vet kidnaps his parents and sends him into space, and due to him being still and emotionless, Muriel unknowingly takes him to that same vet. The flashbacks at the present day collide with the same events, as Muriel and Eustace almost meet the same fate, being flown into the unknown. But Courage is finally able to change things, breaking the cycle. The vet is shot into space instead, where it is implied that his canine victims are going to slaughter him. Dark stuff. The emotional part is at the end, where we are shown how Courage and Muriel met.
Oh, my poor thing. Out here all alone? What courage you have. Would you like to come home with me?
This is the finale of the show, ending in a way that wraps up the status quo. There is one more episode after this that almost made the list. Perfect. Besides being known for the disturbing blue trombone, it has a really good moral lesson and a better look at Courage's character, but I like this episode more as it just feels more like a finale for the show. The Hunchback of Nowhere, an episode I myself didn't expect to see on this list, but upon rewatch, it holds up well compared to others, and that's because it tried something a bit different. Usually, when a stranger knocks on the door, it's some gross asshole who ends up fucking them over, but instead it's this kind hunchback who nobody judges for his appearance, except for Eustace, who is repulsed by this dude, so much so that he chastises everyone else for even talking to the hunchback. Even though Eustace being this much of a jerk might put some people off, he gets his just desserts in one of the funniest ways possible.
Well, you look like something the cow spit up.
You, sir, are extremely bald.
Yeah, you... Oh, come on, have a ring at the neck.
The icing on the cake is Muriel taking their side, roasting her husband in the process. The hunchback eventually confronts Eustace on top of the barn, where he falls and breaks his back once again. Surprised he even survived this episode. The ending is pretty satisfying yet melancholy, where he leaves and thanks Courageous for all he's done for him.
I think it's time I left.
The moral lesson is pretty overdone, not judging those by their appearances instead by character, but they at least juxtaposed it with showing that someone is really only ugly on the inside, as our man Eustace can never be ugly on the outside, besides being bald of course. The House of Discontent. This episode is a classic simply for how creepy it is. The house is being haunted by an unknown entity who wants them to leave. This is the spirit of the harvest moon, an unholy abomination that is pissed Eustace can't grow anything on a farm. So if a farmer can't simply do that, he must leave said farm. The spirit is done really well because they used a different medium, live action. It makes this ghost seemingly unworldly and haunting.
Your time is up, non-farmer.
Now you've gone and done it. It's midnight and we haven't grown a thing.
Get out now, or face the consequences.
He was played by Fred Melamed, who has an extensive amount of other roles like in Adventure Time and Grand Theft Auto 5. The guy does an amazing job here. Eustace is stubborn as always, not wanting to leave, so he tries to argue with the spirit, and ends up sweating in defeat. The heat is turned up, but they are saved as Courage was able to use Eustace's sweat in order to grow a flower. Wait, what? That works? Apparently so, and we never see the Moonhead Man ever again.
Well, I guess Eustace really did learn something under the harvest moon in his own way.
And then I'll grow hundreds of plants, thousands of plants, and I'll be rich, rich, rich.
The music here is also pretty noteworthy, as it adds to the overall haunting tone. It gives off a disturbing vibe that many other pieces of horror media can't replicate. This just stuck out to me so much as a kid, so I had to include it here. Everyone wants to direct. I'm surprised this episode got made. It has to be the darkest ever conceived for the series, just based off the plot alone. So this nutjob knocks on the door saying he wants to make a movie at the house. Not an adult film, mind you, just a classic zombie movie. And since cash is being offered, of course Eustace says yes. But this guy, Benson Tarantella, is an actual zombie. And this was all a ploy to release his partner, von Volkheim. When the two were alive, they posed as amateur film directors who fucking murdered 13 people.
Benson Tarantella and Errol van Volkheim pose as film directors to lure unsuspecting victims to their fate. Tarantella and von Volkheim jailed. Von Volkheim released for good behavior. Tarantella dies in prison.
Now they both are back from the dead and plan to eat Muriel. This doesn't even sound like it's from a children's movie, but instead the plot to an R-rated horror movie from the 1970s. However, these two zombies are foiled when Courage finds a simple solution. He changes the script, making the two directors argue, before burying themselves underground again. And of course, both Eustace and Muriel are unaware of this, being seconds away from making a snuff film. Still, despite how dark it is, it's still a very gripping story that actually manages to keep you on your feet.
Once and for all, I never want to work with you again.
Who wants to work with a hack like you, anyway? Oh, shut up.
Last of the Star Makers. A more emotional moment focusing on a dying species, the Star Makers. These giant space squids have only one chance of survival, but since the remaining mother happened to land on Eustace's property, he calls the government in exchange for some sweet cash. And since they locked up Muriel, it's time for Courage to save the species. A standout to me for this episode is the music. It's more melancholy and emotional this time. It comes in a lot to drive home the sadness of the situation.
Courage, I'm worried about Mama Squid. Look at her. She's so sad. I think she's withering away. It's all up to you. You've got to get those eggs back under that squid.
Yet luckily, Courage is able to set the baby squid free. The mother, who was too weak from her fall, actually dies, but in a more beautiful way as her body becomes a garden. So here are a few other things I liked about this one. The stakes are as high as ever, not due to danger to our main cast but for the universe. If the species doesn't survive, there will be no more stars in the sky. Oh, and then there are these 3 government guys who have godly powers, like being able to turn into a hoverboard. Speaking of godly, Eustace is blown up in the end and becomes a constellation in the sky. He is now in his final form, that of a Greek god meant to be worshipped. The Revenge of the Chicken from Outer Space. This is a sequel episode to the pilot, which aired several years before, so for those who didn't see it, they do a recap. Probably one of the best recaps ever, as it's a silent slideshow presentation. The chicken is back and looks pretty tasty, but he needs head. No, not that head, like an actual new head, as his was burned off. And he looks to Courage, as he's the reason why it happened, but after some crazy hijinks, Eustace is decapitated instead. A crazy chase scene ensues, with the chicken using a plunger to go after Muriel and Courage. These moments are so cartoony, but in a good way. It proves how amazing a horror comedy can be, by its sheer goofiness mixed in with a creepy villain. They all land at some missile test site, where that darn chicken is finally killed off for good, and it seemingly ends on a good note, until a headless Eustace is spotted holding Muriel's missing slipper. A nice wrap up for sure.
Oh, there's Eustace with my slipper.
The episode's classic B-movie vibes just work super well, and so does the weirdness factor. I mean, it's about a cooked chicken trying to cut off a dog's head and being blown up by the US government. The Tower of Dr. Zalost. The first of only 2 half-hour long episodes made for the series, it gladly needed that time to craft such an incredible story. It revolves around the depressed mad scientist Dr. Zalost and his rat friend, who try to find ways to cure his sadness. They try holding the city for ransom, which goes according to plan, but it doesn't work. Money doesn't in fact make him happy, so he continues to rain hellfire upon the city of nowhere, with these little cannonballs that make you just depressed as he is. Courage must stop him, as one of those affected is Muriel. Eustace wasn't, as he apparently has no emotions, but you know what he does have? Courage ends up facing off with these two, resulting in them being cured through love and Muriel's happy plums. The lady can cook, man. The themes of struggling with depression and all are really powerful in this episode. They could have made Zalost an irredeemable jerk, but you understand his motives. Also, his theme music is some of the best in the series. The score is flat out amazing and deserves more praise. Oh, and my favorite bit of humor comes from Eustace in this episode. He confuses Zalost's massive robotic tower for some hippie kids in their Jeep. King Ramses' Curse. Without a doubt, this is the creepiest episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. This is due to the villain, the ghost of King Ramses. He's out to curse those in possession of his slab. This happens to be Eustace due to his greed. He believes he can sell it despite it being stolen. In fact, some asshole archaeologist tries to scam him with a tote bag. Yeah, I'm on Eustace's side here. That's until Ramses shows up and unleashes his 3 plagues.
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
What's your offer?
The first is a flood, which Courage stops. Eustace is one smart bastard though. The second is Ramses' horrible theme song. Courage stops that as well by simply smashing it. But the third one he can't stop. It's a plague of locusts, which devour the whole house. I love the added detail of Muriel cooking to relieve stress in the situation. The slab is thrown out, but Eustace pushes his luck and pays the ultimate price.
And don't think you can come around here pushing no tote bags on us, neither. What's your offer?
Return the slab.
I actually think the dated CGI is a good thing for the episode. It makes Ramses seem otherworldly and scary, like something you wouldn't want to see late at night. But what sells it is the voice. It turns out this is the voice of none other than John R. Dilworth, the creator of the show, and the design was made by his brother Jim, who did the same for the Blue Bugle. The Mask. The final episode is one you might expect on the list, but maybe not at number 1. I respect it a lot for being incredibly ahead of its time with the themes and dark implications of the plot. At first it seems like a typical Courage episode. A masked figure is staying the night and beats the shit out of Courage just because he's a dog. Her name is Kitty and she reveals how troubling her situation is. Her lover, Bunny, is in an abusive relationship with Mad Dog, a gangster. Yes, an abusive relationship. They really don't sugarcoat it here. They don't add any jokes to lighten the mood during those scenes. Just brutal realism that Bunny is with the wrong people.
I take you from a two-bit joint and make you a class act, and you want to make me second-rate? If I even smell Kitty, I'll bury the two of you.
But Courage helps her escape, showing both Kitty and Bunny that not all dogs are bad. Eustace and Muriel have a B story where they get briefly mad at each other, but make up quickly. It's one of the few times that Eustace is truly nice. Something super rare it seems. The cartoon violence gets intense, which I love. I mean, Mad Dog is defeated by being run over by a train. It was smart leaving this as a half-hour episode. It gave more weight and stakes to the story. Courage really was a great show that took risks and excelled because of that. It's a classic that many like myself will continue to cherish.